The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, though time meant little when it came from a star system 300 light-years away. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the communication center of Earth's Orbital Station 7, watching the holographic display flicker with alien symbols. The translation software worked through the text, converting the harsh angular script of the Crovath language into something humans could understand. It was not a request. It was a demand. The Crovath Empire requires the presence of Earth's representative. You will come to our homeworld. You will come alone. You will hear our terms. The room felt colder after the message finished playing. Commander Peterson, the station's military liaison, crossed his arms and shook his head. He was a broad man with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too many battles. This is a trap, Ambassador. Everyone can see it. Elena did not respond immediately. She read the message again, studying each word choice, each subtle implication. The Crovath had been part of the galactic community for over 3,000 years. They were warriors, conquerors, and survivors. Humanity had only made first contact 50 years ago, and in galactic terms, they were children stumbling into a room full of predators. They want us to refuse, Elena said quietly. Her voice carried the trace of an accent from her childhood in Argentina, though she had spent most of her adult life in space. If we refuse, they have their excuse for war. And if you go, they'll kill you and still have their war, Peterson replied. He moved closer to the holographic display, as if proximity might reveal some hidden detail. The Crovath don't do diplomacy. They do dominance. Their entire culture is built on strength and combat. Elena smiled, but there was no humor in it. Every culture is built on something? The question is finding the cracks in the foundation. She had been a diplomat for 15 years, but before that, she had been an anthropologist. And before that, during the resource wars on Earth, she had been a battlefield surgeon. She understood violence, but she also understood that violence was just one language among many. The trick was knowing when to speak and when to listen. 3 days later, Elena's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Crovath system. The planet below was called Crovathar in their language, which translated roughly to blood and victory. The world was beautiful in a terrible way, with swirling red clouds and dark oceans that looked like pools of oil. 2 moons hung in the sky like watching eyes. The Crovath escort ships surrounded her vessel immediately. They were angular and aggressive, covered in spikes and weapon ports. Elena's pilot, a young woman named Sarah Chen, gripped the controls with white knuckles. They're targeting us, Ambassador. Of course they are, Elena said calmly. She was watching the planet's surface through the viewport, trying to absorb every detail. Cities sprawled across the continents in geometric patterns, and massive structures rose toward the sky like monuments to war. Let them guide us down. No resistance. The landing was rough. The Crovath preferred intimidation over comfort. When the airlock opened, Elena stepped out alone into the crimson afternoon light. The air was hot and dry, tasting of iron and dust. A delegation of Crovath warriors waited for her. They were enormous. The shortest stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in chitinous armor that seemed to be part of their biology rather than clothing. Their faces were angular and insectoid, with multiple eyes that gleamed like black pearls. Each warrior carried weapons that looked ancient and well-used. The lead warrior stepped forward. His armor was decorated with engravings, and a cape of dark fabric hung from his shoulders. I am Commander Vexerel. You will follow. Elena bowed her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than submission. She had studied their customs obsessively during the journey. I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth. I am honored to walk your world. Something flickered in Vexerel's eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Humans rarely showed respect to the Crovath, usually responding with either fear or false bravado. Elena offered neither. They walked through the city in silence. The streets were wide and filled with Crovath citizens going about their business. Markets sold food and weapons side by side. Children, smaller versions of the adults, played games that looked suspiciously like combat training. Everyone stopped to watch Elena pass. She felt the weight of thousands of eyes on her back. The war cathedral rose before them like a mountain. It was not a religious structure, Elena knew, but rather the center of all state business. The Crovath conducted their politics the way they conducted everything else, in an arena, in front of witnesses, with the constant threat of violence underlying every word. Inside, the cathedral was vast. Tiered seating rose on all sides, and in the center was an open space the size of a football field. At the far end, elevated on a platform of dark stone, sat a throne made entirely of weapons. Swords, axes, energy rifles, and devices Elena could not identify were all welded together into a seat of power. King Thrazakor sat upon that throne. He was larger than the other Crovath, his chitinous armor a deep red color that matched the sky outside. Multiple scars crossed his visible body. Marks of battles survived. His eyes fixed on Elena the moment she entered, and she felt the intelligence behind them. This was not a simple brute. This was a predator who thought before he struck. The king's voice boomed across the cathedral. The human comes. How small she is. How fragile. Laughter rippled through the assembled crowd. Elena counted at least 3,000 Crovath warriors in attendance, packing the seating areas. This was not a private negotiation. This was a show. Elena walked forward until she stood in the center of the arena floor. She did not bow. She did not show fear. She simply stood and waited, her eyes never leaving the king. "I am Elena Vasquez," she said, her voice amplified by the cathedral's acoustics. "I speak for humanity." Humanity, Thrazakor repeated, drawing out the word like an insult. A species of diplomats and merchants. Weak things hiding behind words and trade agreements. You have no honor. You have no strength. You are prey pretending to be predators. Elena let the insult wash over her. She was watching the crowd, reading their reactions. Most showed approval and bloodlust. But not all. She noticed a group of older warriors in the front section, their armor covered in more engravings than the others. Their faces showed something different. Unease, perhaps, or disapproval. One warrior in particular caught her attention. He sat close to the throne, his armor marked with the symbols of high rank. His eyes moved between Elena and the king with an expression she could not quite read. Calculation, judgment. This warrior was important. "Your Majesty," Elena said, choosing her words carefully. "I have come as requested." "What are your terms?" Thrazakor leaned forward on his throne of weapons. A smile crossed his alien face, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Terms? There is only one term. Humanity will submit to Crovath authority. Your worlds will pay tribute. Your ships will serve our fleets. Your people will acknowledge us as your superiors." The crowd roared its approval. Elena waited for the noise to die down before responding. "And if we refuse?" The king's smile widened. "Then you will face traditional challenge. Single combat. You against me. If you win, humanity goes free. If you lose, humanity submits." There it was. The trap laid bare. Accept and die. Refuse and give them their excuse for war. Either way, the Crovath got what they wanted. But Elena was still watching that high-ranking warrior near the throne. As Thrazakor made his declaration, the warrior's expression had shifted. Just for a moment, she saw something flash across his face. Disgust. That was interesting. That was very interesting indeed. Elena stood in the center of the war cathedral while thousands of alien warriors watched her in silence. The weight of their attention pressed down like a physical force. King Thrazakor waited on his throne, still smiling that terrible smile, confident in his trap. She needed time to think. Time to observe. Time to understand what was really happening here. "Traditional challenge," Elena said slowly, letting her voice carry across the massive space. "I am unfamiliar with all aspects of Crovath tradition. As a guest on your world, I would not want to dishonor your customs through ignorance." It was a careful statement, not a refusal, not an acceptance. Just a request for information. Thrazakor's smile faltered slightly. He had expected fear or defiance, not curiosity. "You dare to question Crovath tradition?" "I dare to respect it," Elena replied. "Respect requires understanding. Would your Majesty explain the rules of traditional challenge so that I may face it properly?" The high-ranking warrior Elena had noticed earlier shifted in his seat. His eyes narrowed as he studied her. She caught his gaze for just a moment and saw recognition there. He understood what she was doing. She was buying time and gathering information. Thrazakor waved a clawed hand dismissively. "The rules are simple. 2 warriors enter the arena. 1 warrior leaves alive. Combat continues until death. There are no weapons restrictions, no time limits, no interventions. Victory proves strength. Strength proves right. This is the foundation of Crovath civilization for 3,000 years. A noble tradition," Elena said. She began walking slowly around the arena floor, appearing to examine it while actually studying the crowd. And this tradition has been used to settle all disputes? All important disputes, Thrazgor confirmed. Challenges between rivals. Challenges for position. Challenges for the throne itself. Ah, Elena said. So your majesty also gained the throne through traditional challenge? The temperature in the cathedral seemed to drop. Several warriors shifted uncomfortably. The high-ranking warrior's face became very still, like a mask. Thrazgor's voice turned cold. My predecessor, King Drasmor, died of natural causes. Heart failure during peace negotiations with the Yartek species. A tragic loss for our people. Elena nodded slowly. Of course. Forgive my ignorance of recent history. She paused, then added, though I had read that King Drasmor was young for a Crovath, only 400 cycles old, and in excellent health. Even the strong can fall unexpectedly, Thrazgor said. His claws gripped the armrests of his throne. But we waste time with history. You will answer my challenge or prove humanity's cowardice before the galaxy. Elena stopped walking and faced the throne directly. I notice, Your Majesty, that you hold a cup. Is that part of the ceremony? For the first time, Thrazgor looked uncertain. He glanced down at the ornate vessel in his hand, a beautiful piece of metalwork covered in royal seals. This is the chalice of victory. The king drinks from it during all state functions. Another tradition you question? Not question. Observe, Elena said. She was watching how he held the cup, how his fingers curled around it protectively. It is beautiful. May I see it more closely? No. The word came out too fast, too sharp. Thrazgor realized his mistake and tried to cover it. It is sacred. Only the king may touch it. Elena filed that information away. The king was protective of his cup. Unusually protective. The high-ranking warrior stood. His movement drew every eye in the cathedral. Your Majesty, if I may speak. Thrazgor's eyes flashed with anger, but he could not refuse in front of the entire court. General Krelzoth, you have something to add? So the warrior was a general. That made sense. Elena watched him carefully as he descended from his seat and approached the arena floor. General Krelzoth was old for a Crovath, his armor scored with the marks of countless battles. When he spoke, his voice carried authority. The human shows interest in our traditions. This is unusual. Most aliens mock our ways or fear them. Perhaps we should honor her curiosity with proper explanation. She delays, Thrazgor snapped. She fears combat. Perhaps, Krelzoth said. Or perhaps she simply wishes to die with understanding rather than ignorance. Is that not also a form of courage? The crowd murmured. Krelzoth had just defended a human, something no one had expected. Elena saw her opening. General Krelzoth is wise, she said. I do not fear death. I have walked through battlefields and held the dying in my hands. But I'm a student of cultures, and the Crovath culture is ancient and complex. Before I accept this challenge, I would understand one thing. What thing? Thrazgor demanded. Elena turned to address the entire crowd, not just the king. Why does King Thrazgor demand submission from humanity now? Our species has been part of the galactic community for 50 years. We have not threatened Crovath territory. We have not insulted Crovath honor. We have barely interacted with your empire at all. So why this challenge? Why this moment? The question hung in the air. It was a good question, and everyone in the cathedral knew it. Thrazgor stood from his throne. Because humanity grows too bold. You expand too quickly. You make alliances with too many species. You must be reminded of your place before you become a problem. So this is preventive, Elena said, not responsive. You attack not because we have wronged you, but because you fear we might someday be strong enough to resist you. We fear nothing, Thrazgor roared. Then why not wait? Elena pressed. If we are so weak, so fragile, why not let us grow and then crush us when we actually pose a threat? Why waste resources on a species of merchants and diplomats? General Krelzoth was watching the exchange with intense focus. Elena saw understanding dawn in his eyes. He knew what she was doing. She was making Thrazgor explain himself, forcing him to justify his actions before his own people, and the justifications were weak. I need explain nothing to pray, Thrazgor said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. You will accept the challenge, or I will accept, Elena interrupted. But first I request human custom, a moment of meditation before combat, and the right to examine the ritual weapons so I may choose properly. Thrazgor laughed, relief evident in his voice. She had accepted. The trap had closed. Granted. You may have 1 hour. The combat will take place at sunset, when the sky turns the color of blood. General Krelzoth approached Elena as the crowd began to disperse for the waiting period. He spoke quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. You are cleverer than you appear, human. All humans are cleverer than we appear, Elena replied softly. That is our advantage. What can you tell me about King Thrazakor? Krelzoth glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Why would I help you? Because you said, if I may speak, when you addressed him. Senior generals do not ask permission from their kings in Crovath culture. They advise. They counsel. But you asked permission, which means he has made you afraid, which means he is not the king you wanted. The general's eyes widened slightly. This human saw too much. King Drasmor was a great warrior and a wise leader. His death was unexpected. Suspicious, Elena said. That is a dangerous word. Truth is often dangerous. Tell me, General, if someone had poisoned King Drasmor, how would they have done it? Crovath biology is different from human. What poisons work on your species? Krelzoth was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. There is a compound from the northern wastes. It grows in volcanic soil. In small doses, it enhances strength and stamina. In large doses, it causes heart failure, and continued use becomes an addiction. The user needs more and more to function normally. Elena's mind raced. And this compound. What color is it? In liquid form? Dark blue, almost black. She thought of the chalice of victory, its ornate design hiding the color of its contents. She thought of how protectively Thrazakor held it, how he had refused to let her see it closely. General Krelzoth, Elena said quietly, I believe I know how to win this challenge without fighting at all. But I will need your help. The old warrior studied her face. You ask me to betray my king. I ask you to help your people. There is a difference. Krelzoth was quiet for a very long time. The binary suns of the Crovath system began their descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. In the distance, drums began to beat, summoning the crowd back to the cathedral for the execution they all expected to witness. Finally, the general spoke. What do you need? The hour of meditation passed too quickly. Elena spent it not in quiet contemplation, but in careful observation and planning. General Krelzoth had given her access to the weapon preparation chamber, a room beneath the war cathedral where ritual combat equipment was maintained. The walls were lined with blades, hammers, energy weapons, and devices whose purposes Elena could only guess at. An old Crovath named Sevrak watched over the weapons. He had been the keeper for 300 years, he told her, his voice creaking like old leather. His armor was plain and undecorated, marking him as a servant rather than a warrior. But his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. You will die today, Sevrak said matter-of-factly as Elena examined a massive war hammer. King Thrazakor has killed 17 challengers since taking the throne. He is fast and brutal. You are small and soft. Probably, Elena agreed. She set down the hammer and moved to a rack of bladed weapons. Tell me, Sevrak, were you the keeper when King Drasmor ruled? The old Crovath's expression shifted. I was. For 200 years before his death. What kind of king was he? Sevrak was quiet for a moment, his clawed hands resting on a polishing cloth. He was the kind of king who remembered the names of servants, who understood that strength without wisdom is just violence, who believed the Crovath could be more than conquerors. You miss him. The whole empire misses him whether they admit it or not. Thrazakor rules through fear. Drasmor ruled through respect. There is a difference. Elena picked up a long curved blade. It was beautiful, its edge sharp enough to catch the light. This weapon, what is its history? That is Corveth, the Mercy Blade. It was wielded by Queen Talaresh 400 years ago. She was a philosopher warrior who believed combat should be swift and honorable. The blade is designed to kill quickly without suffering. May I carry this into the arena? Sevrak's eyes widened. You may carry any weapon here, but why choose one designed for mercy? You will need every advantage to survive even moments against the king. Elena turned the blade over in her hands, feeling its balance. Because I do not intend to use it for combat. The old keeper stared at her. Then you truly will die. Perhaps. Or perhaps there are ways to win without fighting. Tell me something else, Sevrak. You have been in the cathedral for centuries. You see everything. What do you know about the chalice of victory? Sevrak's face went very still. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he moved to a corner of the room and retrieved an old scroll. He unrolled it carefully, revealing ancient Crovath script and illustrations. "This is the history of royal traditions," he said quietly. "See here? The Chalice of Victory was created 2,000 years ago. It was meant to be shared during state functions. The king would drink first, then pass it to his advisors, then to gathered warriors. It symbolized that the king's strength came from his people. Shared, Elena repeated. Not kept private. Not until Thrazkor. Severok's voice was barely a whisper. He drinks alone. He claims the chalice is too sacred for others to touch. But that is not tradition. That is innovation. Elena felt the pieces falling into place in her mind. And when did Thrazkor start this private drinking? Shortly after King Drasmor's death. Perhaps one cycle later, which meant approximately 5 years by Earth's calendar. 5 years of slow addiction growing worse. 5 years of needing the compound to function. She wondered how much he was consuming now. How dependent he had become. The drums grew louder. Sunset was approaching. Elena thanked Severok and made her way back to the main cathedral floor, the mercy blade in her hand. The crowd had returned, larger than before. Word had spread throughout the city that a human would fight King Thrazkor. Thousands packed the seating areas, with more watching from balconies and doorways. Elena spotted General Krelzoth in his position near the throne. He met her eyes and gave the smallest nod. Thrazkor descended from his throne as Elena entered the arena. He had removed his ceremonial robes and now wore only battle armor, and carried a massive blade that crackled with blue energy. The weapon was as long as Elena was tall. The king's eyes were bright, almost feverish. His movements were quick and sharp. The compound in his chalice was working through his system, enhancing his already formidable strength. A Crovath official stepped forward to announce the combat. By tradition and law, King Thrazkor challenges the human ambassador Elena Vasquez. Victory proves strength. Strength proves right. Combat begins at the sound of the war horn and ends with death. Are both parties prepared? I am prepared, Thrazkor said, his voice echoing across the cathedral. Elena raised the mercy blade. I have a question first. By Crovath tradition, is the challenger permitted to speak during combat? The official looked confused. Speaking is not forbidden, though it is unusual. Most prefer to save their breath for fighting. Then I will speak, Elena said, and I will ask King Thrazkor to answer if he dares. Thrazkor laughed. Ask your questions, human. I will answer while I kill you. The war horn sounded, a deep note that shook the air. The combat had officially begun. Elena did not attack. She did not even raise her blade into a fighting stance. Instead, she stood calmly and began to speak. King Thrazkor took the throne 5 years ago, after King Drasmor died suddenly during peace negotiations. A healthy king, only 400 cycles old, dying of heart failure. How tragic. How convenient. Thrazkor's expression darkened. I dare to observe, Elena interrupted. I dare to question. I dare to notice patterns. For example, I notice that King Thrazkor drinks constantly from his private chalice. I notice that he drinks alone, breaking ancient tradition. I notice that he becomes agitated when questioned about it. The crowd was completely silent. This was not the combat they had expected. Elena began walking slowly around the arena, addressing different sections of the audience. I am an anthropologist by training, she continued. I study cultures, and the Crovath culture is fascinating because it is built on honor, on tradition, on the belief that strength and right are connected. But what happens when someone corrupts those traditions? What happens when someone uses poison instead of combat, fear instead of respect, lies instead of honor? Thrazkor charged. His blade swept through the air where Elena had been standing, but she had already moved. She was faster than she looked, and she had spent her meditation hour memorizing the arena's layout, planning angles of escape. You slander your king, Thrazkor roared. I speak truth, Elena replied. She was breathing hard now, the exertion of dodging beginning to show. There is a compound from the northern wastes. In small doses, it enhances strength. In large doses, it causes heart failure. In continued use, it creates addiction. And it turns liquid dark blue almost black. General Krelzoth stood slowly. Other warriors began murmuring. Everyone could see where this was going. Thrazkor attacked again, this time with greater fury. His blade carved through the air in devastating arcs. Elena ducked and rolled, her smaller size giving her advantages in agility if not strength. The mercy blade remained in her hand unused. "Show them the chalice," Elena called out, her voice carrying across the cathedral. "Share your drink with the court as tradition demands. Prove that you have nothing to hide. I will prove nothing to pray." Thrazakor struck downward with his blade, and Elena barely twisted aside. The energy weapon hit the stone floor and carved a smoking gouge. "Because you cannot," Elena said. She was beginning to tire now, her escapes becoming narrower, but she had to keep talking, keep pushing. "Because that chalice contains your poison and your addiction. Because you murdered King Drasmor with the same compound you now cannot live without. Because you are not a warrior, you are a poisoner wearing a warrior's armor." The crowd erupted. Some shouted denial, some shouted questions. Warriors began arguing among themselves. The official combat had become something else entirely. A trial conducted in front of thousands of witnesses. General Krelzoth's voice cut through the chaos. "Your Majesty, the human makes serious accusations. Tradition demands you answer them. Share the chalice, as our ancestors did. Prove your honor before the people." Thrazakor turned toward Krelzoth, his eyes wild. "You side with prey against your king?" "I side with truth against lies," the general replied. "I side with honor against corruption. I side with tradition against innovation that serves only one Krovath's ambition." Elena saw her moment. While Thrazakor was distracted, she moved, not toward him, but toward the throne platform, toward the ornate chalice that sat on its pedestal, gleaming in the red light of the setting suns. Guards moved to intercept her, but hesitated. The combat was still officially in progress, and she was still an active combatant. Interfering with ritual combat was forbidden. Elena reached the chalice and lifted it carefully. The metal was warm, the contents sloshing slightly. She held it up so everyone could see. "Let the truth be witnessed," she said, and then she did something that changed everything. She walked directly toward General Krelzoth and offered him the chalice. The general understood immediately. If he took it, if the liquid touched his skin, the truth would be revealed. Time seemed to slow. Elena stood in the arena holding the chalice of victory, offering it to General Krelzoth. The old warrior looked at the cup, then at the king, then back at Elena. In his eyes she saw the moment of decision, the moment when honor outweighed fear. He reached out and took the chalice. King Thrazakor screamed, a sound of pure rage that echoed off the cathedral walls. He charged toward them, his energy blade raised high. But he was too far away, and the truth was already revealing itself. Krelzoth tilted the chalice, letting some of the liquid spill onto his hands. The dark blue substance, almost black in the fading light, splashed across his armor and skin. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his skin began to change. Where the liquid had touched, his chitinous armor started to discolor, turning a sickly gray-green. The compound was reacting to contact with Krovath biology in concentrated form. Several other warriors who stood nearby had droplets splash on them as well, and their skin showed the same reaction. The crowd gasped. The evidence was undeniable, visible to thousands of witnesses. This was not ceremonial drink. This was poison. General Krelzoth lifted his eyes to meet Thrazakor's gaze. When he spoke, his voice was cold as winter on a dead world. "King Drasmor showed me this same discoloration on his skin before he died. I thought it was a symptom of his heart failure. But it was not. It was the mark of poison. Your poison." Thrazakor stopped his charge. For the first time since Elena had arrived on this world, she saw genuine fear cross the king's face. He looked around at the crowd, seeing their expressions shift from bloodlust to horror to rage. "This proves nothing," Thrazakor said, but his voice had lost its certainty. The human could have contaminated the chalice. This could be a trick. Elena set down the mercy blade. She had no more need of it. "I have been in your custody since arriving on this world," she said calmly. "I have not been alone. I have been watched constantly. How could I have poisoned your private chalice, which you never let out of your sight?" An older warrior stood in the crowd. His armor marked him as a council member, one of those who advised the throne. "Your Majesty, if I may, I have served in this court for 600 years. I served King Drasmor's grandfather, and I remember the tradition of the shared chalice. My king, I ask you now before your people, share your cup with me. If it contains only ceremonial drink, I will gladly consume it and stand with you against these accusations." Thrazakor's claws clenched. "I need share nothing with traitors." "Traitors?" The council member's voice rose. "I have bled for this empire. I have fought in 50 campaigns. I have lost family to war and time. And you call me traitor for asking you to follow the traditions our ancestors died to preserve? Other voices joined in now. Warriors throughout the cathedral began demanding answers. The careful control Thrazakor had maintained was crumbling. His rule had been built on fear and spectacle, but spectacle could turn against its creator. General Krelzoth stepped forward into the center of the arena. He moved with the weight of authority, of a warrior who had earned his position through 3 centuries of service. King Thrazakor, I invoke the right of challenge. For the crime of murdering King Drasmor through poison, for the crime of corrupting our traditions, for the crime of bringing shame to the Krovath Empire, I challenge you to ritual combat here and now before these witnesses. The war cathedral fell completely silent. The right of challenge was ancient law, older than the current empire. Any warrior could challenge any other, even a king if they believed honor demanded it. And if the challenge was witnessed by the people, it could not be refused. Thrazakor looked around desperately. His guards had not moved to his defense. His council members were watching him with cold eyes. Even the servants had stopped their work to witness this moment. He was alone, exposed, and everyone could see the truth written on his face. The human lies, he tried again. She has twisted your minds with alien tricks. Elena spoke quietly, but her voice carried. I am one human alone on a world of warriors. I carry a blade I never used. I have no power here except observation and truth. If your king is innocent, why does he fear these things? Thrazakor's hand moved to his belt, where a small vial hung on a chain. Elena recognized the gesture instantly. He was reaching for more of the compound, needing it to function, to fight, to survive. The addiction had progressed so far that he could not even face combat without it. General Krelzoth saw it too. You reach for poison even now. Before witnesses. Before your people. You prove the human's words with your own actions. Something broke in Thrazakor then. Perhaps it was the compound clouding his judgment. Perhaps it was simply the recognition that his throne was already lost. Whatever the reason, he attacked. But he did not attack Krelzoth. He lunged toward Elena, perhaps thinking he could still salvage his rule by completing the original challenge. His energy blade swept toward her in a killing arc, fast and brutal, and powered by chemically enhanced strength. Elena dropped flat to the ground. The blade passed over her head so close she felt the heat of its energy field. And in that moment, while Thrazakor was overextended and off balance, General Krelzoth moved. The old warrior was fast. Faster than someone his age should have been. He covered the distance between them in 3 strides and caught Thrazakor's weapon arm. There was a moment of struggle, both warriors enhanced by centuries of training and biological evolution. Then other warriors joined in. The guards who had stood by the throne, the council members in the audience, even some of the younger fighters in the crowd. They swarmed forward not to help their king but to restrain him. Thrazakor fought like a cornered animal. He broke free twice, his compound-enhanced strength giving him an edge. But there were too many, and they were too determined. Finally, he was forced to his knees in the center of the arena, his weapons stripped away, his armor cracked and bleeding. General Krelzoth stood over him. King Thrazakor, you are accused of murder, corruption, and breaking the sacred traditions of our people. The evidence is witnessed. The challenge is made. By ancient law, judgment falls to the people. What say you? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of voices rose as one, shouting in the Krovath language. Elena did not need translation to understand their verdict. The sound was primal, angry, final, guilty. Thrazakor looked up at Krelzoth. For a moment the madness cleared from his eyes and something like understanding appeared. You were always too bound by the old ways, General. I wanted to make us stronger. You made us weaker, Krelzoth replied. Strength without honor is just tyranny. And tyranny always falls. The execution was swift. Krovath justice did not waste time on prolonged suffering. General Krelzoth himself delivered the killing blow, as was his right as the challenger. Thrazakor died in the same arena where he had planned to execute a human diplomat, proving that sometimes the trap springs on the one who sets it. Elena watched it all. She did not look away. She had been a battlefield surgeon once, and she understood that death was part of the equation of life. She felt no satisfaction in it. Only a quiet recognition that justice, however brutal, had been served. As Thrazakor's body was carried from the arena, General Krelzoth turned to Elena. His armor was splattered with blue-black blood. He looked tired, ancient and somehow at peace. You executed him without ever raising your blade, he said quietly. That is a form of warfare we do not practice. It is called observation, Elena replied, and patience, and understanding that every system has weak points, even strong systems, even honor-bound cultures. Especially honor-bound cultures, Krelzoth corrected. We are vulnerable to corruption precisely because we believe in honor so deeply. We want to trust our leaders. We want to believe in their strength. Thrazkor used that against us, Elena nodded. Around them, the cathedral was emptying. Warriors filed out in silence, processing what they had witnessed. The news would spread across the planet within hours. Within days, the entire empire would know that their king had been a poisoner and a murderer. What happens now? Elena asked. General Krelzoth looked at the empty throne, the chalice still lying where it had fallen, the arena stained with evidence of truth revealed. Now we remember who we were meant to be. Now we honor the memory of King Drasmor properly. Now we face the galaxy not as conquerors drunk on poison, but as warriors who value honor over power. He turned back to Elena, and something like respect showed in his ancient eyes. And now, Ambassador Vasquez, we negotiate. Not from a position of dominance or submission, but as equals. You have earned that much. Elena felt the weight of exhaustion settling on her shoulders. She had been in mortal danger for hours, had gambled everything on a theory pieced together from observation and cultural knowledge. But it had worked. Somehow impossibly it had worked. I would like that, she said simply. Negotiation is what I came here for. The binary suns had fully set now, leaving the sky the color of old blood. In the distance, bells began to ring, announcing the news to the city. The king was dead. The empire would change, and a human diplomat had caused it all without ever striking a blow. The negotiations took 3 days. Elena had expected weeks, perhaps months, but General Krelzoth moved with surprising speed. He claimed temporary leadership under the ancient provision that allowed the champion of a rightful challenge to serve as regent until proper succession could be determined. The Cravath Council, shaken by recent events, did not object. They met in a smaller chamber this time, not the War Cathedral. The room was circular, with windows that looked out over the crimson landscape of Crovathar. A simple table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs designed for Crovath anatomy. Elena sat in a hastily constructed human-sized chair that made her feel like a child at an adult's table. But General Krelzoth treated her as an equal. Your people wanted submission, he began, his voice tired but steady. Tribute, service, acknowledgement of Crovath's superiority. Those were Thrazkor's terms. They are no longer on the table. Elena nodded. What do you propose instead? Mutual non-aggression, trade agreements based on fair exchange, cultural exchange programs, and most importantly, time. Time for my people to heal, time to remember what we were before fear ruled us. It was more generous than Elena had dared hope. Why, you could still demand submission. Your empire is vast. Humanity is small in comparison. Krelzoth was quiet for a moment, his clawed hands resting on the table. Because you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that strength is not always physical. That honor can be maintained through truth rather than violence. That even the smallest voice can change the course of empires if it speaks wisely. He paused, then continued. And because King Drasmor would have wanted this. He believed the Crovath needed to evolve beyond simple conquest. He saw a galaxy where different species could coexist without constant war. Thrazkor murdered him to prevent that vision. I will not let that murder succeed twice by continuing Thrazkor's policies. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was not just about Earth anymore. This was about the future of an entire empire. Billions of Crovath who would be affected by the decisions made in this room. There is one condition, Krelzoth added. The galaxy must know what happened here. The truth of Thrazkor's corruption and fall. If we hide this, if we pretend he died naturally, then we learn nothing. The next ambitious poisoner will simply follow his example. That could weaken your empire in the eyes of other species, Elena pointed out, showing internal corruption, assassination, instability. Perhaps, Krelzoth agreed. Or perhaps it will show that the Crovath are strong enough to face their mistakes and learn from them. That we value truth over propaganda. That we are not the mindless conquerors other species fear. Elena extended her hand across the table, a human gesture of agreement. Krelzoth studied it for a moment, then carefully reached out with his own clawed hand and grasped hers. The size difference was absurd, his hand engulfing hers completely, but the meaning was clear. The treaty was signed the next day. News feeds across the galaxy carried the story, and Elena's name became known to billions of beings she would never meet. The human diplomat who had faced a Crovath king and won without fighting. The anthropologist who had turned culture into a weapon. On Earth there was celebration. Commander Peterson sent a message calling her a hero. The diplomatic corps offered her a promotion and her choice of assignments. Politicians wanted her to run for office. Everyone wanted to claim credit for her success. Elena ignored most of it. She spent her last day on Crovathar walking through the city with an escort of Crovath warriors, observing their daily life. She watched children play in the parks, merchants sell their goods, artists create sculptures in the public squares. She wanted to remember that behind every empire, every culture, every species, there were individuals just trying to live their lives. Before she left, Severak, the weapons keeper, asked to meet with her. They stood in the preparation chamber beneath the war cathedral, surrounded by instruments of combat that had not been needed. "You never used the mercy blade," Severak said. The weapon still rested on its rack, untouched since Elena had set it down in the arena. "I did not need to, but you took it into combat." Why? Elena considered the question. Because it represented what I hoped to achieve. A quick end. Minimal suffering. Honor preserved. I carried it as a reminder of what I was fighting for, even if I never drew it. Severak nodded slowly. Queen Talaresh would have approved. She believed the best warriors were those who won without unnecessary bloodshed. He lifted the blade from its rack and offered it to Elena. "Take this, a gift from the Crovath people to the human who reminded us of our better selves." Elena accepted the weapon with both hands. It was lighter than she expected, perfectly balanced. "I will treasure this, and I will remember what it represents." "See that you do," Severak said. "Gifts carry responsibility. This blade has drunk blood in the past in the service of honor. If you carry it, you carry that legacy." General Krell-Zoth escorted Elena to her ship personally. A formation of Crovath honor guards flanked them, not as threat but as respect. News drones captured the moment, broadcasting it to the watching galaxy. At the base of her ship's ramp, Krell-Zoth stopped. "Ambassador Vasquez, I have a question." "How did you know?" "How were you certain about the poison, the addiction, the murder? You took an enormous risk based on theory." Elena smiled. "I was not certain. Not completely. I observed patterns, made deductions, tested hypotheses. But there was always doubt. Always the possibility I was wrong. And yet you risked your life on that uncertainty." "Yes." "Why?" Elena looked up at the alien sky, at the two suns beginning their rise, painting the clouds in shades of orange and purple. "Because sometimes uncertainty is all we have. Sometimes we must act on partial information, on educated guesses, on faith that our observations are correct. That is what humans do, General. We are not the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but we observe, we adapt. We take risks based on understanding rather than just force." Krell-Zoth nodded slowly. "Then perhaps the galaxy is fortunate that humanity has joined it. We need species who think differently, who challenge our assumptions, who remind us that there are many kinds of strength." They exchanged formal farewells. Elena climbed the ramp to her ship, the mercy blade secured at her side. Sarah Chen, her pilot, was waiting with a smile. "Ready to go home, Ambassador?" "Yes," Elena said. "But first, calculate a course to the Yartek homeworld." Sarah's smile faded. "The Yartek? Those are the aliens King Drasmor was negotiating with when he died." "Why would we go there?" "Because those negotiations never finished. Because peace was interrupted by murder, and because someone should complete what Drasmor started." Sarah shook her head but began plotting the course. "You know, most diplomats would take a vacation after nearly getting killed by an alien king. Most diplomats did not just prove that humanity can hold its own through understanding and strategy," Elena replied. "The galaxy is watching now. They have seen what humans can do. We cannot waste that moment." The ship lifted off, leaving the red world behind. Elena watched through the viewport as Crovathar shrank to a point of light, then vanished as they entered faster than light travel. She thought about General Krell-Zoth's question. How had she known? The truth was more complex than she had admitted. She had not known. She had gambled. She had taken fragments of evidence, patterns of behavior, cultural knowledge, and biological theory, and constructed a story that might be true. Then she had bet her life that the story was real. It had worked this time. It might not work next time. But that was the nature of diplomacy, of anthropology, of being human in a galaxy full of stronger, older, more established species. Humanity's advantage was not strength or technology. It was the ability to understand, to adapt, to find the cracks in any system and apply pressure in exactly the right place. Her communicator chimed. A message from Earth's diplomatic corps. Already 3 more species had requested human ambassadors. Already the opportunities were multiplying. Earth's reputation had shifted overnight from weak newcomers to species to be respected. Elena thought about Thrazkor dying in the arena, about General Krelzoth choosing honor over fear, about Severak keeping weapons for 300 years, waiting for someone who would value mercy over violence, about all the small decisions and observations that had led to this moment. She had not set out to execute a king. She had set out to prevent a war. But sometimes those goals required the same actions. Sarah interrupted her thoughts. We will reach Yartek space in 6 days. What's your plan? Elena smiled. The same as always: observe, listen, learn, find the story beneath the story, and hope that understanding is enough. And if it is not enough? Elena touched the mercy blade at her side. Then I adapt. That is what humans do. The ship traveled through the darkness between stars, carrying a human diplomat to the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next chance to prove that humanity belonged among the ancient species of the galaxy, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple revolutionary act of understanding. Thank you for watching, and comment for next part. The Great Hall on Nexus Prime stretched higher than any building on Earth. Crystal walls caught the light from 3 suns and threw rainbow colors across the floor. 47 different alien species sat in floating chairs around the massive room. Some looked like giant insects with clicking sounds coming from their mouths. Others had scales like snakes and hissed when they talked. The biggest ones looked like bears but stood 12 feet tall. Jake Morrison walked into the center of the hall. His black suit looked plain next to all the colorful alien clothing. Behind him came Lisa Grant, a young woman with brown hair who carried a small computer. Colonel Ben Parker followed them both. His military uniform had no fancy decorations, just simple Earth colors. The 3 humans looked very small in the huge room. Jake's hands shook a little as he looked up at all the alien faces staring down at him. Some were laughing. Others made sounds that the translation devices turned into words of mockery. A blue creature with 4 arms floated down from the highest chair. This was Prime Chancellor Zerion of the Altarian Empire. His voice boomed through speakers placed around the room. So these are the famous humans, Zerion said. His tone made it clear he was not impressed. Look at them. No claws, no fangs, no armor on their skin. They want us to protect them like children. More laughter came from the crowd. A massive bear-like creature named Gorthak slammed his fist. On his chair, the sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Their bones break too easily, Gorthak growled. Their muscles are weak. They have no fighting spirit. Why should the council waste time on such soft creatures? Jake stepped forward. He cleared his throat and spoke into the translation device clipped to his shirt. Honored council members, he began. Humans may not look strong, but we have survived on Earth for thousands of years. We have faced ice ages, plagues, and wars. We have learned to work together and solve problems. The alien laughter grew louder. One of the insect creatures made a clicking sound that translated as, "Problem solving will not save you from real predators." Lisa Grant opened her computer and tried to show charts and numbers on the big screen. The data showed human population, growth technology development, and peaceful cooperation between different human groups, but the aliens barely looked at the information. "Numbers on a screen mean nothing," said a snake-like creature with yellow eyes. "We have seen your warriors. They tire quickly. They break easily. They cry when hurt. These are not the qualities of a strong species." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a scientist who had come with the human group, stood up from her seat. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice was strong when she spoke. "If you would just look at our research," she said, "you would see that humans are very good at adapting to new situations. We learn fast. We change our methods when something does not work. We never give up. But her words were lost in the noise. The aliens were not interested in listening. They had already made up their minds about humans. Prime Chancellor Zerion raised one of his 4 hands. The room became quiet. The Galactic Council has made its decision, he announced. Humans are hereby classified as a protected pastoral species. They will remain in their home solar system where they can live safely. They are not suited for the dangers of galactic space. The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Protected pastoral species was the same classification given to cute animals that lived on garden worlds. It meant humans were seen as harmless pets, not equals. This is not right, Jake said, his voice getting louder. We came here asking for friendship, not protection. We want to be partners in building a better galaxy. Partners? Zerion laughed. What could you possibly offer us? Your technology is primitive, your ships are slow, your weapons are basic. You would be eaten alive by the first real threat you encountered. Colonel Parker had stayed quiet during the whole meeting. Now he stepped forward and whispered something in Jake's ear. Jake nodded and looked back up at the council. We understand your decision, Jake said calmly. We will return to Earth and inform our government. The alien guards, tall creatures in metal armor, formed a circle around the humans. They escorted them out of the hall like they were dangerous criminals instead of diplomatic visitors. As they walked toward their ship, Jake could hear the aliens still laughing and making jokes about weak humans. Lisa Grant's face was red with anger. Colonel Parker looked thoughtful, like he was planning something. Their ship, the USS Liberty, was small compared to the alien vessels in the spaceport. It looked like a tiny metal box next to the huge, sleek ships of the council races. The alien workers loading supplies pointed at it and made more jokes. Inside the ship, Jake sat down heavily in his chair. Lisa slammed her computer shut and muttered angry words under her breath. Only Colonel Parker seemed calm. They think we are helpless farm animals, Jake said, staring out the window at the alien city. Parker's old face showed a small smile. Maybe that is exactly what we want them to think, sir. Jake looked at him with confusion. What do you mean? Well, Parker said slowly, it might be useful if our enemies underestimate us. The enemy who thinks you are weak will not prepare for your real strength. Far away from Nexus Prime on a mining world called Kepler 442b, a woman named Carol Hayes sat in a hidden underground room filled with computers and communication equipment. She wore simple work clothes like any other miner, but her equipment was far more advanced than anything the council had seen. Carol listened to a coded message from someone named Steve Chen. He was pretending to be a student at an alien military school, but he was really gathering information about their weapons and battle plans. The Altarians are overconfident, Steve's voice said through the encrypted channel. They think their plasma weapons make them unbeatable. They have no idea what humans are really capable of. Carol smiled as she typed her response. The aliens thought they were so much smarter and stronger than humans. They had no idea that humans had been watching them and learning their secrets for many years. On Earth, in hidden facilities that no alien knew about, human scientists and engineers were working on projects that would surprise the galaxy. They had been preparing for this day when they would no longer be seen as the weak, protected species. The council believed humans were frail. Soon they would learn how wrong they were. 6 months passed since the council meeting. Life in the galaxy seemed normal for most alien species. They continued their trade, built their cities, and felt safe under the protection of their powerful military forces. But danger was coming from far away, and none of them were ready for it. The Skarn Collective had been watching the galaxy for a long time. They came from another galaxy called Andromeda, traveling through space in huge ships made of living metal and bone. The Skarn themselves were nightmare creatures that stood 8 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in hard shell-like armor that could stop most weapons. They had forearms ending in razor-sharp claws, and their faces looked like insects mixed with demons. What made the Skarn truly dangerous was their hive mind. Every Skarn warrior was connected to every other warrior through thoughts they could share. When one Skarn learned something, they all learned it instantly. When one felt pain, they all felt it but did not care. Fear was unknown to them because they thought as one giant mind. The first attack came without warning. 3 Skarn ships appeared near a peaceful trading station called Haven Point. The station's defense systems tried to fight back, but the Skarn ships were too strong. Within hours, Haven Point was destroyed and everyone on it was dead. News of the attack reached the Council on Nexus Prime. Prime Chancellor Zerion called an emergency meeting. The Great Hall filled with worried alien representatives. Their confident laughter from 6 months ago was gone, replaced by nervous whispers and frightened looks. "This is just one attack," Zerion announced, trying to sound calm. "Our fleets will handle these invaders easily. The Altarian Navy has never been defeated." Admiral Krethos, the commander of the Altarian fleet, stood up from his seat. He was a proud warrior with battle scars covering his blue scales. His voice was full of confidence when he spoke. "My ships are already moving to engage the enemy," he reported. "The mighty Stellar Dominion leads 12 battleships toward their last known position. These Skarn creatures will learn the price of attacking Council space." The Admiral's words made many Council members feel better. The Altarian fleet was famous throughout the galaxy for its powerful weapons and skilled crews. Surely they would end this threat quickly. But Admiral Krethos was wrong. Very wrong. The battle near the gas giant Terminus 7 became a disaster for the Council forces. The Skarn ships looked crude and ugly compared to the beautiful Altarian vessels, but looks were deceiving. When the fighting started, the alien ships discovered that Skarn technology was built for war, not beauty. Skarn weapons fired streams of acid that ate through the strongest armor. Their ships could heal damage by growing new parts like living creatures. Worst of all, when Skarn boarding parties got inside Altarian ships, the Council Marines could not stop them. The Skarn warriors moved like a perfect team. They knew where every enemy was without looking. They attacked weak points at exactly the right time. Their claws cut through armor like paper, and they felt no pain when the Altarians fought back. Admiral Krethos watched in horror as his flagship, the Stellar Dominion, was overrun by Skarn boarders. His bridge crew fought bravely, but it was not enough. The Admiral's last message before his ship exploded was a warning to the Council. "They are not like anything we have faced before," he said, his voice full of fear. "They fight as one mind. They do not stop. They do not retreat. Send everything you have." But sending everything was not enough. The insectoid Zephyrians tried their swarm tactics, sending thousands of small fighters against the Skarn ships. The enemy's coordinated defense destroyed the swarms before they could do any damage. The reptilian Korvaxi used their famous poison weapons, which could kill most creatures in seconds. The Skarn's hard shells protected them, and their shared mind helped them avoid the poison attacks. The giant bear-like Vraxians were the strongest warriors in the galaxy. They could tear apart metal with their bare hands and fight for hours, without getting tired. But the Skarn were faster and smarter, using their teamwork to overwhelm even the mighty Vraxians. More bad news reached the Council every day. Colony after colony fell to the Skarn advance. Entire fleets disappeared without sending any messages. The enemy was moving toward the heart of Council space, and nothing could stop them. Prime Chancellor Zerion paced back and forth in his private office, his 4 hands shaking with worry. His advisors brought him reports that got worse each hour. The Skarn were not just winning battles, they were destroying everything in their path and leaving no survivors. "We need help," said Councillor Thesha, a fish-like creature from the water, World Oceania. "Every species must contribute ships and soldiers to stop this threat." "What about the humans?" asked a small, glowing creature from the Luminari species. "Should we ask them for assistance?" The room became very quiet. Then Zerion started laughing, but it was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had lost hope. "The humans?" he said. "Those soft, weak creatures who cannot even leave? Their home system? What could they possibly do against enemies that defeat our best warriors?" His advisor, a young Altarian named Kethos, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, they did offer to help with transportation and medical supplies. Their cargo, ships could evacuate civilians from threatened worlds." Zerion waved one of his hands dismissively. "Fine, send them a message asking for humanitarian assistance, but keep it simple. We need cargo ships, not weapons. Those farm animals would only get in the way of real fighting. Far from the Council, chambers in a hidden base built inside an asteroid beyond Pluto, Admiral Kate Sullivan read the Council's message with great interest. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity as human officers worked at their stations. The room looked nothing like the simple, primitive technology the aliens expected from humans. Advanced computers processed information from across the galaxy. Communication equipment sent secret messages to human agents on dozens of worlds. Weapon design screens showed projects that would amaze even the most advanced alien scientists. Commander Rick Torres appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his hidden position near Skarn space. His uniform bore no Earth symbols, and his ship was disguised as a broken space hulk, but his eyes were sharp as he delivered his report. "Admiral, I have been watching the enemy fleet movements for 3 weeks," he said. "The Skarn follow predictable patterns. Their hive mind makes them coordinated, but it also makes them think in fixed ways. They cannot adapt quickly to unexpected tactics." Dr. Nathan Brooks, the chief scientist at the Luna Research Facility, joined the conversation. His laboratory on the moon had been studying alien technology for decades, learning the secrets that no alien species shared with others. "Their ships are impressive, but they have weaknesses," Dr. Brooks explained. "The living metal that heals damage needs time to regrow. If you hit them fast enough, they cannot recover, and their hive-mind connection can be disrupted with the right kind of electromagnetic interference." Admiral Sullivan listened carefully to both reports. She turned to her aide, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster, who was updating tactical displays with new information. "How long until the Skarn reach the inner systems?" Sullivan asked. Amy checked her calculations twice before answering. "At their current speed, about 6 weeks, ma'am. The Council forces are retreating on all fronts. They cannot slow the advance." Major Chris Anderson, the intelligence officer, looked up from his workstation. "Admiral, our deep cover agents report that Council morale is breaking. Some species are already talking about surrender." Sullivan stood up and walked to the large window that showed Earth in the distance. The blue and green world looked peaceful and beautiful, just like the aliens expected. They thought humans were simple farmers and merchants who needed protection from the dangerous galaxy. "Gentlemen," she said without turning around, "I think it is time to show our alien friends what humans are really capable of. Signal all units. Operation Sleeping Giant is now active." Throughout space, the message reached dozens of human ships and bases. The cargo vessels that had been dismissed as slow and primitive began to change. Hidden weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. False hull plates fell away to reveal military armor and advanced technology. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had been preparing for war long before the Skarn arrived. And unlike the rigid, predictable aliens, humans knew how to fight dirty. The Skarn invasion fleet reached the industrial world of Mechanicus after destroying 3 more Council colonies. The planet was famous throughout the galaxy for building the biggest and most powerful starships. Massive factories covered entire continents, and orbital shipyards floated in space like metal cities. The planet's defenses should have been strong enough to stop any attack. Automated weapon platforms surrounded Mechanicus in 3 protective rings. The Altarian garrison included 50,000 elite soldiers and 200 fighter craft. But the Skarn breakthrough came faster than anyone expected. The enemy ships punched through the outer defenses in less than 4 hours. Their acid weapons melted the automated platforms, while boarding parties captured the orbital factories. The Altarian soldiers fought bravely, but the Skarn's coordinated attacks overwhelmed them quickly. Prime Chancellor Zerion watched the battle reports from his emergency command center on Nexus Prime. Each update brought worse news. The shipyards were falling one by one. The garrison was retreating to underground bunkers. Millions of civilian workers were trapped with no way to escape. For the first time in his long political career, Zerion felt true desperation. The Council's most important military production center was about to fall, and there was nothing left to stop the Skarn advance toward the core worlds. "Sir," his aide Kethos said quietly, "perhaps we should consider asking the humans for more than just cargo, ships." Zerion's pride rebelled against the idea. Asking those weak creatures for military help would be the ultimate humiliation, But as another factory complex exploded on the tactical display, his pride seemed less important than survival. "Send a message to Earth," he said through gritted teeth. "Request immediate humanitarian assistance for civilian evacuation. Make it clear that we need their fastest cargo vessels." The message reached President Helen Carter in the White House Situation Room within hours. She sat at the head of a long table surrounded by her top military and intelligence advisors. Secretary of Defense Robert Kane read the council's request aloud, trying not to smile. "They want our help evacuating civilians," he said. "No mention of military assistance, of course. We are still just the galaxy's taxi service in their minds." General Patricia Lee, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, opened a classified folder and spread photos across the table. The images showed human military assets positioned throughout known space, all disguised as civilian operations. "Madam President, our forces have been in position for months," she reported. "Operation Sleeping Giant can begin immediately." CIA Director Frank Gibson leaned forward. "Our intelligence networks confirm that the Council has no idea about our real capabilities. They still think we are primitive farmers with basic technology." President Carter studied the tactical maps for several minutes. Red markers showed Skarn, positions advancing toward the Galactic core. Blue markers indicated Council forces in full retreat. But scattered throughout the display were small green dots that represented something the aliens had never suspected. "How many ships do we have in position?" she asked. 67 major vessels currently operating under civilian cover," General Lee replied, "plus another 130 smaller craft providing intelligence and support." "And our special operations teams?" 2,000 personnel embedded throughout contested space," CIA Director Gibson answered. "The aliens think they are refugees, maintenance workers, or research scientists." President Carter made her decision. "Activate Sleeping Giant. Show them what humans can really do." Captain Joe Martinez stood on the bridge of what appeared to be a simple grain transport called the Peaceful Trader. The ship was currently docked at a supply station in the Vega system, loading food supplies for refugee camps. But appearances could be very deceiving. "All hands, this is the captain," Martinez announced over the ship's communication system. "Drop masquerade protocols immediately. Activate combat configuration." Throughout the vessel, dramatic changes began. False wall panels slid away to reveal weapon control stations. The cargo bay doors opened to show rows of fighter craft instead of grain containers. The ship's hull shifted as armor plating moved into position and weapon arrays extended from hidden compartments. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Linda Clark watched power readings climb to levels that would amaze alien scientists. The fusion reactors that had been running at minimal output suddenly roared to full capacity, providing enough energy to power a small city. "Captain," she reported through the intercom, "all systems are showing green. We are ready for combat operations." On the bridge, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Sam Rivers worked at a control panel that moments before had been disguised as a simple navigation computer. His fingers moved quickly across advanced targeting systems. "Sir, I am receiving activation. Signals from Ghost Squadron, Phantom Wing, and Shadow Fleet," he reported. "All units confirm they are dropping their covers." Throughout space near human colonies, the same transformation was happening. Cargo ships revealed themselves as heavy cruisers. Research stations extended massive sensor arrays and weapon platforms. Mining operations activated as forward military bases complete with fighter squadrons and marine units. The humans had spent decades building a secret military network while pretending to be harmless merchants and farmers. Every civilian vessel carried hidden weapons. Every research facility was actually an intelligence post. Every refugee camp housed special operations soldiers. On the asteroid base beyond Pluto, Admiral Sullivan coordinated the massive operation. Dozens of screens showed human assets coming online throughout the galaxy. The transformation was happening exactly as planned. "All units report successful activation," Commander Amy Foster announced. "We now have full military capability in 17 star systems." Dr. Brooks joined them from the Luna facility with an update on Skarn movements. "Admiral, our reconnaissance drones have identified a weakness in their formation. They group their ships tightly to maximize their hive mind coordination, but that makes them vulnerable to coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Meanwhile, Colonel Brian Matthews led his special operations team through the ruined cities of New Geneva, a world that had been evacuated weeks ago. His soldiers moved like ghosts through the empty buildings, setting up observation posts and weapon caches. "The Skarn will be here within days," he told his team through encrypted radio. "Remember, these aliens fight like they are playing a board game with rules. We are going to teach them about human creativity." His soldiers nodded, understanding. They had trained for years in tactics that no alien military academy taught. Guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and asymmetric strategies that turned enemy strengths into weaknesses. The first test came sooner than expected. A Skarn scouting force of 12 ships entered the Tau Ceti system, expecting to find it empty after the human evacuation. Instead, they found the UES Defiance, a single human vessel that appeared to be conducting routine patrols. Captain Roy Cooper received the activation signal just as the Skarn ship surrounded his vessel. His crew of 40 looked very small compared to the enemy force, but Cooper was not worried. The Defiance was not as alone as it appeared. "This is Captain Cooper of the United Earth Space Navy," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately." The Skarn response came through their translation systems as harsh laughter. These creatures had destroyed dozens of council fleets, and now a single small human ship was trying to threaten them. "Soft mammals," the Skarn commander replied. "You will be consumed like all the others. Your weakness will feed our young." Cooper's voice remained calm and professional. "I gave you a chance to leave peacefully. Ghost Squadron, you have permission to engage." The space around the Skarn fleet suddenly filled with new contacts as cloaked human ships appeared from nowhere. The enemy had walked into a carefully prepared trap, and now they would learn what human military planning could accomplish. The galaxy was about to discover that the species they had dismissed as helpless farmers were actually the most dangerous predators in known space. The space around the Skarn fleet exploded into chaos as 20 human warships appeared from nowhere. The cloaking devices that had hidden them shut off at the same moment, revealing sleek vessels bristling with weapons that no alien had ever seen before. Captain Cooper's small ship, the Defiance, was no longer alone. The Ghost Squadron had been waiting in the shadows, and now they struck with perfect coordination. The human weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy. Plasma cannons fired beams of energy hotter than the core of a star, burning through Skarn bioarmor like it was paper. Railguns launched metal slugs at incredible speeds, punching clean holes through enemy ships from one side to the other. But the most terrifying weapons were the gravity lances. These devices created focused beams of gravitational force that could tear apart anything they touched. When a gravity lance hit a Skarn ship, the vessel twisted and broke apart as if invisible hands were ripping it into pieces. Admiral Vorthak, the supreme commander of the Skarn invasion, watched the battle from his massive bioship called Flesh Render. His tactical displays showed something that had never happened before in Skarn military history. An entire battle group was being destroyed by a smaller enemy force. "This is impossible," he hissed through his translator device. "The mammals have no military capability. Our intelligence confirmed they are weak and helpless." His second-in-command, a smaller Skarn queen named Ziska, studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. "Commander, these weapons are completely unknown to our databases. Their tactical coordination suggests extensive combat experience." The battle lasted only 12 minutes. When it was over, 11 of the 12 Skarn ships were destroyed. The single survivor fled toward the main invasion fleet, carrying impossible news back to the Skarn command. The engagement was monitored by Council forces from their retreat positions near the Centauri colonies. Prime Chancellor Zerion stared at his tactical display in complete shock. The sensor data was clear and undeniable. Humans had just destroyed a Skarn battle group without taking any damage at all. "This must be some kind of error," he muttered to his aide Kathos. "The humans are a protected species. They have basic technology and no weapons." Kathos reviewed the intelligence reports with growing confusion. "Sir, these energy signatures are completely new. The tactical coordination shows military planning that surpasses our own capabilities. The news spread through the retreating council fleets like wildfire. Species that had laughed at human weakness just months ago now watched in amazement as the sensor data confirmed the impossible. The soft, helpless humans had developed advanced military technology in complete secrecy, but this was only the beginning. Over the next week, more Skarn forces disappeared throughout the outer systems. They would enter a star system and simply vanish, leaving no wreckage and no survivors to report what had happened. The pattern was always the same. Skarn ships would detect what appeared to be civilian human vessels going about normal business. When they moved to attack, hidden human warships would appear and destroy them with weapons and tactics the Skarn could not understand or counter. Human special operations teams struck at Skarn supply lines and communication centers. Colonel Matthews led raids that severed the psychic connections linking Skarn forces together. Without their hive mind coordination, individual Skarn units became confused and vulnerable. The raids were perfectly planned and executed with surgical precision. Human soldiers moved through enemy positions like ghosts, destroying critical systems and disappearing before the Skarn could respond. They used tactics that no alien military academy taught, fighting in ways that confused and demoralized the enemy. On the contested world of Kepler 438b, Matthews and his team infiltrated a massive Skarn communication complex. The biomechanical structure pulsed with organic lights as psychic signals coordinated Skarn forces across dozens of star systems. "Remember the plan?" Matthews whispered to his soldiers as they moved through ventilation shafts designed for much larger alien workers. "We hit the neural nodes simultaneously, cut the connections and get out before they know what happened." The attack took less than 5 minutes. Shaped charges destroyed the organic computers that linked Skarn minds together. When the explosions ended, thousands of Skarn warriors across the galaxy suddenly found themselves alone in their own heads for the first time in their lives. Similar operations happened on 12 other worlds at exactly the same time. The Skarn communication network, which had taken centuries to grow and develop, was crippled in a single coordinated strike. Admiral Vorthak felt the psychic network collapse like a physical blow. The constant presence of his warriors' minds suddenly went silent, leaving him isolated in his own thoughts. Panic spread through the Skarn fleet as individual ship commanders tried to function without the hive mind that had guided them since birth. "Restore communications immediately," he ordered his bridge crew. But the damage was too extensive. The humans had identified critical vulnerabilities that the Skarn themselves did not know existed. Meanwhile, the scope of human military preparation became clear to the shocked Council forces. The mining operations on asteroids throughout the galaxy had been cover for building automated weapons platforms. Research stations activated as military bases complete with fighter squadrons and defensive systems. Most shocking of all, the human refugees who had been evacuated from contested worlds revealed themselves as special operations soldiers, perfectly positioned behind enemy lines. The aliens realized that humans had been planning for this war long before the Skarn invasion began. Dr. Brooks, monitoring from his facility on Luna, provided real-time intelligence to human forces throughout the galaxy. His analysis of Skarn biology and technology gave human commanders the information they needed to exploit enemy weaknesses. "Their bioships require constant neural input from the crew," he reported to Admiral Sullivan. "Disrupt those connections, and the ships will tear themselves apart from internal pressure." This intelligence led to Operation Heartbreak, a coordinated assault on Skarn command vessels. Human ships targeted the organic neural pathways that connected Skarn crews to their living ships. When those connections were severed, the biovessels convulsed and destroyed themselves. The Council species watched these developments with a mixture of awe and growing fear. The humans they had dismissed as harmless farmers were demonstrating military capabilities that surpassed anything in known space. Prime Chancellor Zerion called an emergency session to discuss humanity's new status. The great hall that had once echoed with laughter at human weakness now hosted very different conversations. "We may have made an error in our assessment," Zerion admitted to the assembled council. "The humans appear to have significant military capability that they concealed from us." "Concealed?" asked Counselor Thaisha. "They built an entire secret military while pretending to be helpless. This suggests long-term planning and deception on a scale we never imagined. The Council faced an uncomfortable truth. The species they had classified as needing protection had been protecting themselves all along. More than that, they were now protecting the entire galaxy from a threat that had overwhelmed every other military force. Human ships patrolled the space lanes, hunting down scattered Skarn forces with ruthless efficiency. Their tactics were unpredictable and creative, using strategies that confused enemies accustomed to formal military doctrine. The Skarn invasion, which had seemed unstoppable just weeks before, was falling apart under human pressure. The aliens, who had conquered dozens of worlds, found themselves outmatched by a species they had never considered a threat. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about underestimating humanity. Behind their soft appearance and peaceful words lay the most effective military force any of them had encountered. The humans had turned their apparent weakness into the ultimate weapon, convincing everyone to ignore them while they prepared for war. The Skarn main fleet gathered near the Galactic core for one final desperate attack. Admiral Vorthak had lost half his invasion force to the mysterious human attacks, and his remaining warriors were confused without their hive mind connections. Into his desperation, Vorthak called for reinforcements from the Skarn home territory. The response came in the form of the most terrifying weapon in Skarn history. The Leviathan was a bioship the size of a small moon, carrying 1 million warrior drones in its living chambers. The massive vessel took 3 days to travel from Skarn space to the battle zone. When it arrived, its presence could be felt by every psychic species in the galaxy. The ship was not just large, it was alive, breathing and pulsing with organic energy that made space itself feel hostile. Now the mammals will learn fear, Vorthak declared from his position aboard the flesh render. The Leviathan will consume their pathetic fleet and restore Skarn dominance. The Council races, still retreating from the advancing Skarn forces, detected the Leviathan's arrival with growing terror. Their sensors could barely measure something so large and powerful. It seemed impossible that any force could stand against such a monster. Prime Chancellor Zarian sent another desperate message to Earth. This time his diplomatic language was replaced by simple begging. The Skarn have deployed a weapon beyond our ability to fight, he transmitted. We formally request immediate military assistance from the human government. Our previous classification of your species was clearly incorrect. The message reached President Carter in the White House war room. She looked around the table at her military advisors, noting their confident expressions. Operation Sleeping Giant had exceeded all expectations, but the real test was about to begin. Admiral Sullivan, the President said into the communication device, you have full authorization to engage the enemy with all available forces. On the bridge of the UES Enterprise, Admiral Sullivan received the order with grim satisfaction. The massive human flagship had been disguised as a space station for 10 years, orbiting a distant asteroid while gathering intelligence on alien military capabilities. Now the Enterprise revealed its true nature as the most advanced warship ever, built by human hands. The disguised station transformed into a vessel over 2 miles long, bristling with weapons that incorporated technology from dozens of alien species. All ships, this is Enterprise Actual, Sullivan broadcast to the human fleet. Proceed to Vega system for final engagement, show them what Earth's children can do. Captain Martinez led his wolf pack of destroyers toward the Leviathan's escort vessels. The Patriot and her sister ships moved in perfect coordination, using tactics that human naval commanders had developed over centuries of warfare. Remember, Martinez told his crew, we hit fast, hit hard, and keep moving. The enemy expects formal battle lines and predictable strategies. We are going to give them chaos instead. The human fleet that assembled in the Vega system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 67 major warships supported by over 100 smaller vessels, all equipped with weapons that combined human innovation with alien technology. Dr. Brooks, monitoring from Luna, provided critical intelligence about the Leviathan's weaknesses. His analysis revealed that the massive bioship required constant neural input from thousands of Skarn controllers to maintain its organic systems. If we can sever those neural connections, he reported to Admiral Sullivan, the ship will lose control of its own biological processes. It will literally tear itself apart. The battle began when the Leviathan entered the Vega system with its escort fleet. The Skarn expected to face scattered human vessels and destroy them easily. Instead, they found the entire human fleet waiting in perfect formation. "This is Admiral Sullivan of the United Earth Space Navy," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You have invaded Council space and threatened peaceful worlds. Surrender now or face the consequences." The Skarn response was immediate attack. The Leviathan launched 1,000,000 warrior drones while its escort ships opened fire with every weapon they possessed. The space around Vega became a storm of energy beams and projectiles. But the humans were ready. Their ships moved like dancers, avoiding enemy fire while returning devastating attacks of their own. The gravity lances that had destroyed earlier Skarn forces now targeted the bioship's critical systems. Captain Cooper led a squadron of fast attack ships against the Leviathan's neural control centers. His vessels darted between the massive creature's defensive tentacles, firing precision shots at the organic computers that controlled its functions. "Target the nerve clusters," he ordered his pilots. "Dr. Brooks, mark them on your targeting systems. Cut the connections and watch this monster fall apart." The coordinated human attack overwhelmed the Skarn defenders. Their rigid tactics and predictable formations made them easy targets for human creativity and adaptability. Ship after ship fell to weapons they could not understand or counter. The turning point came when a dozen human vessels converged on the Leviathan's primary neural center. Their combined firepower severed the psychic connections that linked the creature's brain to its body systems. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The massive bioship began convulsing as its own biological processes went out of control. Internal pressure systems failed, causing the creature to tear itself apart from the inside. Admiral Vorthak watched in horror as his ultimate weapon destroyed itself. The sight broke the last of Skarn morale, and the surviving ships fled toward their home territory in complete defeat. The human victory was total and devastating. The Skarn invasion force that had terrorized the galaxy was destroyed or scattered. The species that had promised to consume all organic life retreated to their own space, beaten by enemies they had never considered a threat. News of the victory spread throughout Council space within hours. The alien species that had dismissed humans as weak farm animals now watched recordings of the battle with amazement and growing respect. Prime Chancellor Zerion called for an immediate council session to discuss humanity's status. This time, when the human delegation arrived at Nexus Prime, they came in Admiral Sullivan's flagship leading a full battle group. The great hall that had once echoed with laughter at human weakness now hosted a very different meeting. The alien representatives looked at the human delegation with newfound respect and barely concealed fear. President Carter addressed the council through a quantum communication link, her image appearing above the assembly floor. "We appreciate your invitation to discuss galactic affairs," she said calmly. "I believe our previous classification as a protected species may need some adjustment." Zerion, his political position weakened by the crisis, tried to maintain some dignity. "The human contribution to our mutual defense has been remarkable. We propose reclassifying humans as an allied species with appropriate privileges." Carter's smile was polite but firm. "That is generous, Chancellor. However, recent events suggest that humanity is ready for full council membership with complete voting rights." The vote was unanimous. No species wanted to argue with the people who had just saved galactic civilization. As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Prime, Ambassador Morrison reflected on the journey from dismissed supplicants to galactic power brokers. The other species watched the human fleet with respect mixed with wariness. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about judging others by appearance. The soft-skinned mammals who seemed so fragile had proven to be the most dangerous predators in known space. They combined intelligence with creativity, planning with adaptability, and an absolute refusal to surrender when facing impossible odds. The Council had believed humans were frail, but when war came, they discovered the truth about Earth's children. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.